There aren't many things in life that are more degrading than being treated like a number as a means for a company to make a buck. Being a cog in the corporate machine is something that many of us are very familiar with and are forced to endure to support our families. By all means, working for a massive company doesn't inherently mean that you're treated like a number. Surely, there are corporations out there that treat their employees like real people, but more often than not, that isn't the case. So many of us, myself included, have worked jobs where we were treated like trash and all that our employer cared about was increasing profits, even if that was at the detriment of us low-level employees. As much as that hurts though, it's something that has to be done. Over here in the United States, we live in a society driven by statistics, bureaucracy, and of course, politics. At the end of the day, these different parts of the machine funnel down to one specific thing: money. In the pursuit of this money, these corporate entities will do whatever it takes, even if that means squeezing people dry and discarding them like an old sponge. Now, I've heard people say that you shouldn't stay with the same insurance company for more than 2 years. By the time the 2-year mark rolls around, it's important to shop around and see if you can get a better deal for the same or similar coverage. Hearing that really sparked something in my brain. I've personally adopted that same mentality for jobs, and that's something that I started at least 10 years ago. I've worked a good handful of jobs in my life, all of which I stayed at for right about 2 years before I realized that I could jump ship and find a better offer that would suit my family more appropriately. The thing is though, in switching jobs and employers, I've learned that sure, the pay would be better and mixing things up was good for my mental health, but ultimately, no company ever really treated me better than the last. The sad reality is, if you have an office job, your seat in that chair is one that the company sees as easily replaceable. When it comes to the point that you leave that job, it may be sad to say goodbye to the friends that you've made in the trenches in the form of your coworkers that you've gotten close to, but at the end of the day, that company couldn't care less if you're there or not, because when you leave, they're just gonna coax some other sucker in, usually at less pay than what they were giving you. The thing though is that this is nothing new. For as long as these massive corporations have been operating, they've nearly always been treating their low-level employees like worker ants in an anthill. This develops a vicious cycle where people like me end up jumping from one corporation to another in search of higher pay and better working conditions, but ultimately, though we may find that higher pay, we may never find the proper treatment that we all deserve as humans. With that being said though, if you're someone who's found a career that sparks joy for you, treats you well, and compensates you in a way that allows you to live comfortably, hold on to that as long as it keeps doing those things. Some of us search our entire life for something along those lines. I personally feel very lucky to have gotten out of that cycle. I found my place here on YouTube, and I'm so incredibly thankful that I've found my career that sparks joy, treats me well, and allows me, my wife, and my kids to live comfortably. What's funny though is how a lot of times these companies are very self-aware of what they do and how they treat people. Not only are they aware of it, but the workers are aware of it. Furthermore, the media is aware of it as well. That's not just the news that reports on unemployment rates and corporate standings, but also movies and TV shows that portray the exact cycle that I'm talking about. Be it in the form of a documentary highlighting these aspects, or a simple cartoon spoofing them. The fact of the matter is that it's no secret that it's happening, and that so many people put up with it in an effort to survive and hopefully thrive. And that's why today, on our nostalgic walk down memory lane, we're gonna check out an episode of Rocko's Modern Life that warned us about the dangers of mistreatment by a corporation. We're gonna be looking at none other than the Season 1 episode, Canned. This episode starts out at a massive superstore called Super Lotto Comics, where we see Rocko manning the register as he's being talked to by Filbert about the importance of washing your hands every time you turn the page of a comic book. Just then, the loudspeaker at Rocko's register coughs all over him, advising him that he's wanted in the manager's office. We see Rocko make his way through the store and over to the door labeled Manager.
Ah, 1456910. Come in, have a seat. Good news! You're being promoted from job title 612 to job title 814 due to volume statistics.
Excuse me, sir, but could I just...
I'm with somebody! Volume statistics and the hiring freeze we're currently experiencing. We have to cut holes in our workforce to eliminate counterproductivity.
Rocko, being confused by all of this corporate jargon, asks his boss what all this means, and his boss laughs in his face, telling him that he's fired, as he ties a pink slip around his head and flushes him down the toilet chair that Rocko's sitting on. Later on, we see Rocko's dog Spunky in Mr. Big Head's yard, messing with his salmon bushes. Mr. Big Head rushes out and yells at Spunky, causing him to panic and run away. Just then, Rocko walks up to grab his newspaper.
You're gonna pay for those salmon bushes and everything else.
Oh, sorry. Don't worry about Mr. Big Head. He's got a permanent wedgie. Let's go inside.
Inside the house, Spunky waits eagerly by his bowl to be fed, but Rocko ends up going through the cupboards and finding them all empty. He sadly explains to Spunky that he lost his job, and just like that, we see Rocko's water, electricity, and all of his other utilities shut off one by one. He strikes a match to shine some light on the newspaper as he begins his search for a new job in the classifieds. He sees an ad for a gig as a tattoo artist, which sounds interesting, so he decides to give it a go.
Anything wrong, sir?
No, I'm fine. I'm just a little queasy, that's all. Remember, I wanted to cover the roof of my mouth and look just like the picture. A big can of beans that says Gloria on it.
Coming right up, Mr. Horny.
After the rhino swallows him whole, we see Rocko back at home, yet again searching for another job. This time, he tries his hand at being a plumber's assistant, which just consists of him pulling the plumber's pants up to cover his crack over and over again. When that isn't quite fulfilling, Rocko ends up back at home looking for yet another job.
Specialty phone operator. I could do that. Couldn't I? Oh, baby, oh, baby, oh, baby. Rocko? Mrs. Big Head?
Having tried every single job in the paper, Rocko ends up with only one last option: Conglomo. We cut on over to their headquarters where Rocko walks in to be greeted by their slogan, "We own you," printed proudly on the wall. He walks through a hall of monitors pointed at every singular employee and into a room where a screen drops down from the manager to greet him.
You! What do you want?
I'm here about the job.
Job? Why would I give you a job? Actually, I think I do have something in the product testing department.
Rocko and Mr. Big Head continue onward towards the product testing department as we see a bunch of people essentially getting tortured as they test out the products made by Conglomo. They continue through a door marked Rejected Products as Mr. Big Head proceeds to make Rocko try out various seemingly dangerous projects. First up is the Nosemaster Pocket Surgeon that gives Rocko multiple different nose jobs. Next up is a new product called Gene Enhancement Chewing Gum, which makes Rocko grow a tree from his head when he chews it.
Everyone's gonna want one of these. Shade, all the lovely oxygen, birds nesting. This is terrific.
That is the dumbest thing I've ever heard.
After that, Mr. Big Head brings Rocko to a helmet called the Dial-A-Do, which promises to style your hair perfectly without needing to go all the way to the salon. Mr. Big Head puts it on Rocko's head, and it works like a charm, painlessly giving Rocko various hairstyles.
Oh, that is amazing. Wow, a juicer. Hooray!
Quit playing around, you miserable... Give me this!
Cool, a buzz cut.
After that, Mr. Big Head brings Rocko outside to what almost looks like a prison yard with tall stone walls lined with razor wire. We see Mr. Big Head run back inside, leaving Rocko out there alone. Rocko's approached by a bird that says they're going to test out a brand new yet to be tested product called Mad Giraffe Repellent. The bird sprays Rocko before giving him the kiss of death.
Say your prayers, kid! Oh, I can't watch.
Mr. Big Head walks out of the control room, tied into knots, as he falls on the ground. Rocko asks him if he can get him anything, but Mr. Big Head screams at him, telling him that he's fired. Feeling defeated, Rocko walks out of the building and down the street. That is, until he walks past a building with a help wanted sign. Rocko is surprised to find that the building is a brand new comic book store, and not too long after that, we see Rocko manning the counter while Filbert is yet again stressing the importance of washing your hands after every page turn.
Does your miserable little store carry the 5-volume set of Nuclear Swan? I'm double parked and I have a customer waiting.
Oh boy, no, I'm okay. Oh boy, oh boy.
Have you got it or not? Why don't you give me a pack of gum as well?
Gum?
Rocko kneels on down, and instead of selling him some gum from the store, he pulls out a pack of gene-enhancing gum that he took from Conglommo. After that, we see Mr. Dupet driving down the street, chewing on the gum, when all of a sudden a beehive grows out of his head and causes him to crash into a pole.
Cut! Alright, that's it, boys. We don't need you for the end.
Uh-oh, okay. So we're done?
Yeah, if we need you next week, we'll call you.
Okay, bye. Bye-bye, take care. Should I, just leave the costumes here?
Yeah, wardrobe will pick those up.
You've got my resume, right?
Yes, we'll call you!
Okay, thanks. Bye.
Honestly, there's so much that I want to say about this episode. First things first, I want to commend this one for being willing to tackle this subject. It's interesting to me because all of this is supposed to be parody and for comedic effect. However, some of the scenarios presented here are pretty straightforward representations of how a lot of these industries go. First things first, it struck a nerve for me and really hit home when Rocko gets called into his boss's office and the boss greets him as 1456910. This right here is a very literal representation of how low-level employees really are just a number in the eyes of the people who run these companies. It drives me absolutely nuts because I've been that number before. I've been 62050, I've been 86240, and honestly, those are just the two that I can remember off the top of my head. In all reality, it's so demeaning to have someone who's supposed to be your superior not address you by your name. That shows you that they don't really care about you. They know you can and will be replaced, so instead of learning your name and treating you like an actual human, they refer to you by the number that you represent to that corporation. It drives me insane on a personal level, and all things considered, it hurts to think how early this is being instilled nowadays. I remember the first time I was assigned a number to identify myself. It was actually in high school in about 2010 or 2011. My school implemented a system where, in order to pay for lunch, we had to enter our designated number on a keypad. Now, in all fairness, it makes sense because it's their easy way of streamlining the system of paying for your lunch, but looking back on it, I'm realizing that was the first time that I ever got referred to as a number. Like, prior to that, my whole life growing up, you would give your name to the lunch lady and got to be identified on a personal basis. Or in elementary school, you'd give your lunch money to the teacher in the morning and they'd process it from there, so come lunchtime, you'd have your lunch paid for already. Now, as simple and harmless as that is in hindsight, it's weird to think that this was the first time I was referred to as a number, and it definitely wouldn't be the last time. Continuing with how Mr. Dupet talked to Rocko in the beginning though, it drove me nuts the way that he used his bureaucratic jargon to literally tell Rocko that he's being promoted and fired in the same sentence.
Good news! You're being promoted from job title 612 to job title 814. Due to volume statistics and the hiring freeze we're currently experiencing, we have to cut holes in our workforce to eliminate counterproductivity.
Great. What does that mean?
You're fired!
This right here gave me flashbacks to the 2 years that I spent being a door-to-door salesman for a massive cable and internet corporation. My boss was an absolute jerk. Like, on a personal level, the guy was just an a-hole. As far as work goes though, he would expect us to be walking and knocking on doors from 9 AM to 9 PM, at least 5, but hopefully 6 days a week. Of course, the position wasn't paid hourly, so you could spend way more than 40 hours a week knocking, and if you didn't make substantially more sales, you wouldn't see any extra pay. Literally, I'd be out at 8 PM and it would be pitch black outside as I'm knocking on people's doors trying to sell them TV, internet, phone service, and a security system. I remember one time I was out knocking in the dark and I knocked on a door that I was required to knock on per my route. Their porch was completely dark and I ended up tripping on their stairs and I sprained my ankle really badly. That sucked, and I was really unhappy about it, but my biggest mistake that even my coworkers pointed out to me was that I told my boss what had happened. Of course, instead of him checking on me and making sure that I was okay, he more cared about having me sign paperwork and getting me in for a drug test as quickly as possible. On top of that, my coworkers just completely bought into the whole corporate stooge role very happily, I might add. For them, they had this running gag for people who couldn't cut it on the sales team, saying that they were promoted to customer, with the joke being that they had lost their job for not making enough sales. Now, in all reality, I was the black sheep of the group. My coworkers were all older men who liked drinking whiskey, smoking cigars, and hanging out on the golf course. But the experience I had working for this company made me quickly realize how cold and calloused you become when you've grown accustomed to being treated like a number for the corporate machine. These guys would wear their number with pride like the good little worker ants that they were, and when the company treated them like trash, they would say thank you and continue to play the corporate game happily. It was just really gross in my opinion. During my time with that company, I skirted by, getting talked to by my boss a lot for not making enough sales. The thing is though, I'm not the type to forego my integrity to make a buck. I was never the guy to lie to a customer or to weasel a sale out of them. I was the salesman that took no for an answer and moved on, unlike my coworkers who would just say whatever the customer wanted to hear in order to get them to sign up for service. In all reality, working under the watchful eyes of these massive corporations like Conglommo is something that can definitely make you lose hope for a lot of things, but what hurts the most is the fact that for a ton of people, they don't have much of a choice. Without a paying job, our lives quickly deteriorate in a really bad way. A great example of this is the point where Rocko comes home after being fired. He walks into the house and immediately he's completely out of food and all of his utilities are shut off within minutes. Now, by all means, this could be an indication that Rocko was already struggling before he got fired. However, I more saw this as a metaphor for how quickly losing a job can completely rock your world in a devastating way. This right here is a harsh reality for a lot of people. Sometimes we're forced to play by the rules set by a massive corporation because without a paycheck, we're straight up screwed. those dominoes start to fall, and boy do they fall quickly. On top of devastating you financially though, it's definitely worth pointing out how companies like this can very easily destroy your passions for certain things. For example, being passionate about video games from a very young age and growing up dreaming that someday you'll become a game developer, only to get a job working for a company like Activision. A company that's notorious for allegedly treating their employees horrifically. The act of a company taking you in, sucking the life out of you, then discarding you like you never mattered in the first place is enough to completely ruin certain things for you. A prime example of this would be the flies stuck on the spiderweb throughout this episode. They're used for a small role, then when they're done, the producer basically tells them to scram because they aren't needed anymore. This right here is just a small glimpse into how awful people get treated in the entertainment industry and how quickly they can be thrown away like they never mattered to begin with. Don't even get me started on the irony that this specifically is being parodied on a Nickelodeon show of all places. In all reality, Rocko is lucky that working for Super Lotto Comics didn't ruin his love of comic books. For me personally, I don't have cable TV anymore, and I probably never will again, especially seeing how that industry works from the inside when I was a part of it. The funny thing is though, Conglommo, which is clearly a parody of your generalized run-of-the-muck massive corporation, doesn't even try to hide the fact that their employees are treated so poorly. Their slogan says it all. We own you. That right there speaks volumes. Them using that as their slogan applies to not only their employees, but also their customers. Their employees for obvious reasons, but the customers because of the monopolization that often comes along with a conglomerate. This company is so massive and it dominates whatever their market is so much that customers likely don't have much of another choice for whatever it is they're offering. On top of that though, I have to point out the massive wall of monitors that Rocko saw when he walked in. Each one with a different yet similar face on it of an employee who's being monitored while they click away at their computer. Working under the watchful and all-seeing eye of Conglommo, who monitors their every move to make sure that they're staying on track and maximizing efficiency. That right there is so incredibly common that it's not even funny. Sure, it might not be a camera in your face, but a lot of these massive corporations have their processes in place to make sure that when you're on company time, you're consistently going above and beyond to make sure that they get every single penny they can out of their customer and get their penny's worth out of you, the employee, through your work. Working for a massive corporation can be a really hard pill to swallow. It's a tough one because no matter who you are, unless you're self-employed, odds are you're working under the umbrella of a huge company. It's something that we as a society just kinda have to come to terms with in this day and age, as much as that sucks. But when you have a family to support, what choice do you have? We have to do what we have to do in order to survive. As far as the rest of this episode goes, there's a lot of really odd jokes and gags here that we certainly have to talk about. First of all, one of the most notoriously talked about adult gags in the show's history, the whole phone operator scene. Rocko ends up getting a job as a specialty phone operator. As he sits at his desk, we see a sign in the background that says, "Be hot, be naughty, be courteous." Not to mention Rocko seemingly reading from a script as he says,
"Oh baby, oh baby, oh baby."
Then, of course, the icing on the cake being that the caller on the other line is Mrs. Bighead. Of course, the gag here insinuating that Rocko got a job as an operator for a spicy phone hotline. And Mrs. Bighead, well, isn't quite fulfilled by her husband. Then, of course, we have Mr. Horny, the rhinoceros, who's getting a can of beans with the name Gloria on it tattooed on the roof of his mouth. The joke with his name, of course, playing on the fact that he has a horn. From there, we also see this scene where Rocko gets a glimpse at Conglommo products being tested, most of which seem incredibly dangerous, like this kid playing on an electric water slide. Now, this right here is a very obvious representation on how this company doesn't really care about the well-being of their consumers, and will put out a very dangerous product just to make money. But like, I have to stop and take a second to question the jumper jock. Like, this guy has a jockstrap on with wires going into it, while someone is connecting the other side to a car battery. This right here, I'm not gonna lie, I never noticed before. Watching this previously, I always thought that the shock that Rocko hears and witnesses was from the kid on the electric water slide. Now, realizing that this is happening as a result of this dude practically being tortured, I'm just completely mind blown. Previously, I made a video going over every single adult joke and innuendo that I could find in this show, and this one was certainly overlooked. I swear, the more I look back and check this show out, the more I'm surprised that Nick let them get away with so much of this stuff. But what do you guys think? I'd love to hear your thoughts and opinions on this episode down in the comments below, and of course, I always value your feedback. I gotta give a massive thank you with all the love in the world to my true 90s kids over on Patreon. You guys are so incredibly appreciated, and I can't thank you enough for supporting me and my family. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to drop a like and give a little praise to the YouTube algorithm in hopes that it pushes this video to everyone else, and as always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.